Pari Vrajakacharya Ashto Shri Srimad Isvara Sabhayacharya Iskon Vivi Pandacharya save the whole world Srila Prabhupada Jai Vishnu Vishnu Paramahamsa Pari Vrajakacharya Ashto Tarasata Shri Srimad Isvara Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Prabhu Vaishnavi Ki Namacharya Shri Haridatta Puri Ki Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Chaudhuri Radha Kundi Ki Braj Muni Sindam Dam Ki Ravi Bhakti Ram Ki Shri Chaitra Ram Ki Ganga Mai Ki Chaman Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulsi Mahari Ki Samrita Bhakti Ki Jai Jai Go Premanand Om Krishna Samadi Om Krishna Samadi Om Krishna Samadi Om Krishna Samadi Shri Ram Shri Ram Krishna Bhava Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Just try to find something here. John, okay, so we're going to be hearing a little bit about the Atmarama verse. This chapter 24 is entitled 61 Explanations of the Atmarama verse. But actually, as Lord Chaitanya explains, there are unlimited explanations. He's only given the most prominent. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And what I'll do first is I'll read the Atmarama verse, but just a little bit of an explanation of this chapter. So basically it starts where Sanatana Goswami, he asked Lord Chaitanya to explain the Atmarama verse. This is about verse 3 or 4, he says that. And then up till about verse 120, I think, no, 108 or 9. Let's just see if I can find it. Verse 106, he says, I have given all these explanations just to give some indication of the verse's meaning. Now let me explain the real meaning of the verse. So he's given like a whole lot of different explanations about the Atmarama verse, and then he says, this is just an indication of what the verse means. Now I'm going to give you the real meaning of the verse, and this continues up to about verse 320 or so. And then after that, Lord Sanatana Goswami says, you've asked me to write a Vaishnava directory, so please give me a synopsis of this book. And so then Lord Chaitanya explains to Sanatana Goswami the contents that he wants in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And then from that, Sanatana Goswami, he researched and he compiled the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is just, it's kind of interesting because Lord Chaitanya gave the synopsis of what he wanted in the verse, in the book, and then taking that instruction, then Sanatana Goswami went and researched all the various literatures to find supporting evidence for what Lord Chaitanya wanted. So it's quite a nice way of structuring something. And so this verse today is 51 on the board? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's one of in verse 41, Lord Chaitanya starts to explain the qualities of Krishna. So I was thinking just to go through all them so we get, rather than just taking one section or one verse out of context, we'll read the section about the qualities so you can get the overall perspective of what's being explained here. But what I'll do first is I'll go back and read the Atmarama verse so we kind of connect it with what's being explained here. This is verse 5. Atmaramas chamurayo nigranta apyarukrame kurvantya hoitakam bhaktim itam buddha guno hari. Translation: those who are self-satisfied and unattracted by external material desires are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and whose activities are wonderful. Hari, the personality of God, is called Krishna because he has such transcendently attractive features. So this is the verse that Lord Chaitanya is discussing. And it's really amazing because we see here that most of this chapter, because the chapter is only about 350 verses from memory, it's the second last chapter of Bhakti Lila. Most of this chapter is dedicated to discussing the Atmarama verse, so obviously it's a very significant verse. And it's not the first time that Lord Chaitanya explained it. He also explained the verse to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the importance of this verse to him, but he explained it with many less meanings. This one he gives 61 meanings, he says these are the prominent meanings. From memory, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is probably about 25 or 30 different meanings he gave him, but he received many more meanings. Now the verse that's on the board, Guna Shabdera Ata Krishna Guna Krishnera Guna Nanta. That's not. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at 41, sorry. Excuse me. It's 51. Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
That's just one line here. Although you probably could have fit on the board. Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
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 Someone else like to try?
Rupa Guna Shravane Rukmini Adira Akarshana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Rupa Guna Shravane Rukmini Adira Karshana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Karshana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Rupa Guna Shravane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
Studies?
Rupa Guna Shavane Rukmini Adira Akashana.
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 Rupa, beauty. Guna, qualities. Shravane, by hearing.
Rukmini Adira,
of the queens, headed by Rukmini. Akashana, attracting. Translation: the queens in Dwarka, headed by Rukmini, are also attracted to Krishna simply by hearing about his transcendental beauty and qualities. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go back to verse 41. And I'll read the translations, because in 41 we see that, let's go back here to verse 5. You see the last line of the upper verses, Itam Bhuta Guno Hari. So the second last word is Guna. So then we see in text 41 that Lord Chaitanya is saying the word Guna means quality. The qualities of Krishna are transcendently situated and are unlimited in quality. All of the spiritual qualities are full of transcendental bliss. So a very important statement Lord Chaitanya is making there, that first off, his qualities are transcendental. They're not mundane. Like we may have various qualities, but these qualities have their various inebrities, their various contaminations. Whereas Krishna's qualities are all transcendently situated, therefore they're pure and devoid of any type of inebrity or lacking, if you like. And we can see this, if you look at the various pastimes of Krishna, for instance, you can see how he manifests so many different loving exchanges with his devotees. As mentioned by Parasaram Muni, he says, Aishvarya Samagrasya Virashaya Sashri Jnana Vairagashaya Sam Bhagavati Tingara. It talks about the 6 prominent qualities of Krishna. How he's, his power, his beauty, his strength, his fame, his wisdom. These things are unlimited. There's unlimited power. There's, just to give an example, there is a form of the Lord called Anantashesh. And on this form, on his hoods, the universes sit like a mustard seed. And this, according to Jiva Goswami, this form of the Lord is only a Shaktavesha form. It's not actually a plenary form of the Lord. It's just a Jiva that Krishna's invested some power in so he can carry the universes on his hood. And you just imagine how much power this living entity has. We couldn't even lift this building without a machine and carry it on our head. But Krishna, or a form of Krishna, or actually a jiva that's being empowered by Krishna, is carrying all of the universes on his head, and they're so insignificant he doesn't even notice they're there. Give you an idea of the powers of God. And this is just Shakti that he's given to someone. It's quite extraordinary. And it mentions here that they're unlimited, and as you're saying, with the universe, carrying the universe, unlimited power. There's nothing that Krishna cannot do. One time, someone was trying to stop Prabhupada, and he asked Prabhupada a question. He said, Swamiji, is your Krishna so powerful that he can create a mountain that he can't lift? And Prabhupada said, yes. Because if he had said no, he would still say Krishna's limited. He said, yes, and then he will lift it. So that's the nature. Krishna's constantly expanding. But nothing we know in this universe is like that. Actually, there's an interesting statement by a famous physicist called Albert Einstein. And he was being asked about, the dimension or the size, of things. And he said, actually, there's only 2 things that are unlimited: the universe and human stupidity. And he said, but I'm not sure about the universe, which I thought was quite an interesting statement. Because we see that, people can be pretty stupid sometimes. Yeah, and as in this material universe, it's one of the few things that's unlimited. But we see that Krishna's qualities, that not only are they unlimited in quantity, but they're also unlimited in their quality. So the qualities themselves are unlimited, but also he has unlimited qualities. There's nothing that Krishna, every quality you can imagine, every quality you have, it comes from Krishna. But the quality in us is full of iniquities, is full of contamination, but the quality in Krishna is completely pure. And this is the nature of everything in the spiritual world, is completely pure. And you can, if you take any particular quality and you analyze it, you can see. Just say, for instance, we may love somebody, right? And there's a degree of purity and that love, but it's contaminated by different anarthas. It's contaminated by different personal desires. Like, we might have a loving relationship with someone, but we want to get something from them. We might want to enjoy sex with that person. They might have a lot of money, or they might have whatever. And so our loving relationship is motivated by something. In the spiritual realm, there's no motivation. We just want to love Krishna for the sake of loving Krishna. Or Krishna loves all the living entities because they're his part and parcel. He doesn't want anything from us. He's just interested to have a loving exchange. Krishna's transcendental, verse 42, Krishna's transcendental qualities of opulence, sweetness and mercy are perfect and full. And this is Aishvarya Samagarasha, they're full. They're complete. It's just like, you might see a strong person in this world. I mean, I don't know who's the most famous weightlifter right now, but previously it was a fellow called Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was quite famous. But his strength was not complete. He couldn't lift the universe. But as I was saying in that story, Krishna's strength is so great, he can lift anything. There's nothing he can't lift. So this is the sense of his being full. As far as Krishna's affectionate, leaning towards his devotees is concerned, he's so magnanimous that he can give himself to his devotees. And this is one of the reasons that to achieve pure devotional service is very rare. And it mentions that Rupa Goswami gives the six qualities, the 6 things you gain when you achieve bhakti. He says that pure devotional service is very rarely achieved. And one of the primary reasons for that is because if you have pure bhakti, you control Krishna, because he's completely controlled by his devotees' love. So you wouldn't want to give, it's just like, giving a loaded gun to a child. Very dangerous thing. And we see sometimes it happens that, children get loaded guns from their parents, especially in countries like America. In Australia it's great. Nobody has guns. I know what it's like here, but in Australia, basically only the police have guns. And we don't have, gun deaths are just a rare thing there. Whereas you go to a country like America, every day people are killed with guns. So we don't have that kind of concern of a child getting a loaded gun, but you read about it in America here on the news where a child's got a loaded gun, playing with his friend, and he shoots his friend. Because he doesn't know the danger of a gun. So in the same way, to give someone who's unqualified pure bhakti, and they can control God, could be quite dangerous. Imagine what they could do if they could control God. But then, the devotee, when they get in this position, they don't have any desire to fulfill. They don't want anything from Krishna other than to serve Krishna. And that's why it's a perfect relationship, because Krishna only wants to serve the devotee only wants to serve Krishna. And it's a perfect relationship. Krishna has unlimited qualities. The devotees are attracted by his uncommon beauty, mellows and fragrance. Thus, they are nonetheless attracted to the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, I studied Srimad Bhagavatam from my father. This is Sukadeva Goswami speaking. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, the destroyer of all sinful reactions. Being full in self-realization and bliss, he had no material desire. Still, he was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Person of Godhead, and out of compassion for the people, he described the transcendental historical literature called Srimad Bhagavatam. This is compared to the light of the Absolute Truth. Lord Sri Krishna attracts the minds of all the gopis with his beautiful, transcendental bodily features. And this is quite, an interesting thing for us to understand. It's like in this material world, you might see a beautiful woman, you might see a handsome man, and the senses are drawn to them. It's natural. It's just a natural thing because the senses, they want to connect with the objects. That's just it's just like a magnet. You put a magnet near another magnet, and they attract. And so the senses are like that. If the senses, especially conditioned senses, are exposed to the objects of the senses, then you're just naturally drawn to these things. But if we look at these things in consideration of the beauty of Krishna, these things are insignificant. And the process of bhakti is about cultivating this attraction to Krishna, cultivating the awareness of how beautiful Krishna is. And the gopis, they're seeing Krishna, and he's so attractive, he's just so beautiful, that they can't help but be drawn to him. They can't stop themselves from being attracted to him. And even we see in different stories how their loved ones, their husbands and mothers and whatever, have tried to stop the gopis from going to the forest in the dead of night to see Krishna, and they give up their lives as a result, because they're so attracted to Krishna. And Prabhupada, he talks about this Vrindavan mood sometimes, because we see it's a phrase that's bandied around sometimes, where especially I see it in deity worship, for instance, where like devotees might dress the deities very simply. Prabhupada's idea with deity worship is we should have this Aishvarya, this Vaikuntha, very, very opulent mood of worship. But sometimes devotees will do it very simply. This, if they're queried, they say, "Oh, but I'm worshiping the deity in the Vrindavan mood." And for me, that's quite a unusual statement to say in the sense, because for start, it's not compatible with the mood we're meant to do the worship in ISKCON. But also, we need to understand what the Vrindavan mood means. And Srila Prabhupada defines it in different places, and he gives very similar definitions. And one of the prominent definitions he gives is, he says the Vrindavan mood means that you cannot help but think of Krishna 24 hours a day. Your senses, your consciousness is so purified that you're just constantly drawn to Krishna, and you can't stop yourself from thinking about him. It's just like, if you try to stop breathing. Can anyone do that? Stop breathing for 15 or 20 minutes? Maybe for 30 seconds you can do it. But I don't know if you ever had the experience of almost drowning. And it's like, sometimes, I don't know, well, it's like in Australia, the whole country is surrounded by sea, and most of the people live near the coast. There's only a few cities inland, basically one large city and a few towns. And so a lot of people in Australia go to the beach. And it's not uncommon sometimes when you have big surf, you get these things, what we call dumpers. Like usually the surf, you get a nice sort of, ride, and you can sort of glide on the waves. But sometimes the waves are breaking in such a way as they just pick you up and they smash you into the bottom, quite heavy. And sometimes what happens then is you get completely disoriented and you don't know which way is up and which way is down, and because of the force of the water, you're pushed on, you're kept under the water and you can't get out. And so, because you're usually not prepared for that, and so you don't have sufficient oxygen in your lungs, so at some point you start to need oxygen. And the body's wired in such a way is that even if you're underwater, the lungs will force you to inhale water. And that's when you drown, is when you inhale the water, because the body just forces it. It's like what they call it, a motor function. It just like forces you to inhale, and then you inhale water. And so that pushing or that thirst for oxygen is innate in the body. You can't stop breathing. So if you reflect on that, and then you look at the love that greatly advanced devotees have for Krishna, it's so innate in their consciousness, they can't stop themselves from thinking about Krishna. And sometimes they curse themselves because they're upset with Krishna. Oh, why can't I get him out of my mind? And they curse themselves. And even we see there's interesting stories where the gopis, for instance, they're so drawn by Krishna's beauty. I mean, the name Krishna means all attractive, but we don't have any real sense in this material world of what that means. We see things that are somewhat attractive. We want to look at them, we want to hear them, we want to taste them. They have some attractive features. But is there anything in this material world that is so attractive that you can't stop yourself from looking at it? You're just drawn to it 24 hours a day. I mean, even like the most, in this material world, the most handsome man or the most beautiful woman, how long do they maintain that beauty for? 10, 15, 20 years, and then it's finished. And then the body starts to age, and all goes baggy and flabby, and That's just what happens. That's just the nature of everything in the material world. But Krishna's beauty is eternal. The beauty of the resonance of the spiritual world is eternal. It doesn't diminish. It's always there. And all the residents of the spiritual world are attractive, but Krishna is the most attractive, and they're all attracted to him. And the gopis, at one point, they were, they're admiring or just, drinking the beauty of Krishna, and they started to curse the Creator for making eyelids, because the eyelids, they blink and then they interrupt with our vision of Krishna. So they thought that was just he's a bad creator, he doesn't know how to create things properly. So it's saying here, he attracted the minds of all the gopis with his beautiful transcendental bodily features. Dear Krishna, we have simply surrendered ourselves as your maidservants, for we have seen your beautiful face, decorated with tresses of hair, your earrings falling upon your cheeks, the nectar of your lips, and the beauty of your smile. Indeed, because we have also been embraced by your arms, which give us courage, and seen your chest, which is beautiful and broad, we have surrendered ourselves. This is also a verse of the Bhagavatam. The queens in Dwarka, headed by Rukmini, this is today's verse, are also attracted to Krishna simply by hearing about his transcendental beauty and qualities. But their attraction is different from the gopis, because their attraction has got some other qualities in it. Their attraction is there's a degree of Aishvarya there, so that interferes with the if you like, the purity of their surrender, whereas the gopis, they're simply attracted to Krishna because he's so beautiful. There's no other mood there. He's just so beautiful, they're attracted. His chest is so handsome, his eyes are just so attractive. And that's their attraction, whereas the queens in Dwarka, they have this, he's God. And for the gopis, that interferes with the resonance of Vrindavan, that interferes. And this is the difference between their love. And you'll see even there's pastimes where Krishna was involved in the rasa dance with he's doing the rasa dance with the gopis, and at one point he disappeared, and all the gopis are running, here, there, everywhere, looking for Krishna, and they happen to come upon Lord Narayan manifesting his four-armed form, and they offer prayers to Lord Narayan. My dear Lord Narayan, where's Krishna? So even though Lord Narayan's appeared in this Aishvarya feature, they're respectful, but they're not interested in that because Krishna is so attractive to them. And so you can see that even these, and like you see, like in examples like Arjuna, for instance, he's directly seeing Krishna, but the Aishvarya interferes. He starts to, I didn't realize you were God, and he's offering prayers to Krishna, in the 11th chapter, where he's kind of overcome by this Aishvarya component. Whereas you'll see, like in Vrindavan, you can look at things like when Mother Yasoda, when Balaram accuses Krishna of eating dirt, and then so Mother Yasoda looks into Krishna's mouth, and in Krishna's mouth, he sees the whole universe. He sees the universal. She sees the whole universe, the universal form, and then she sees, Krishna in there. She sees herself with Krishna on her lap, and she starts to consider, who is this child? Is he this? Is he the demigod? Is he the supreme person of God? And she says, no, she's just my son. He's hungry. She feeds him. These types of Aishvarya concepts interfere with the relationship. She doesn't want to think he's God. She's my baby. I want to feed him. Because if she was thinking that Krishna was God, how would she act as his mother? How would she have these exchanges with him? It wouldn't be possible, because she'd always be, just like we see in the, I think it's the 11th chapter of the 10th canto, it describes Krishna killing Kamsa. And what happens after he kills Kamsa is Vasudeva and Devaki are there also. They're witnessing Krishna killing Kamsa and all the wrestlers. And it dawns upon them, because they've had this realization in varying degrees, but it really kind of sinks in that, my God, He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as a result, they can't interact with Krishna at all. They can't even offer pranams or anything. They're stunned by this realization. They're just frozen. They can't do anything. And so when one has this Aishvarya concept, especially for someone who's in direct exchange with Krishna, I don't want to use the word contaminate, but it does taint the relationship so that you can't interact with Krishna in a way that, say, for instance, the residents of Vrindavan do. So in a sense, it is considered a lesser relationship because it has that sort of colouring, if you like. I don't want to call it contamination because it's not. In one sense, it is, but it's not really. When do we get to? Yeah. This is verse 52. The most beautiful Krishna I have heard. Oh, most beautiful Krishna. This is Rukmini. This is the letter she wrote, I think. Yeah, this is the letter she wrote to the Brahmana talk. Oh, most beautiful Krishna, I have heard about your transcendental qualities from others, and therefore my bodily miseries are relieved. If someone sees your transcendental beauty, his eyes have attained everything profitable in life. O infallible one, I have become shameless after hearing your qualities, and I have become attracted to you. And she hasn't even seen Krishna. She's just heard about him, and she's just given up every other attraction because her brother Rukmini wanted her to marry someone else, and once she heard about Krishna, she just couldn't accept any other man. So she writes this letter, and Brahma sends it, and so Krishna comes and kidnaps her. Purport: this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:52-37, was written by Rukmini Devi in a letter to Krishna, inviting him to kidnap her. Shukadeva Goswami described this to Maharaj Pariksit when the king asked him how Rukmini had been kidnapped. Rukmini had heard about Krishna's qualities from different people, and after she heard about them, she decided to accept Krishna as her husband. I mean, gosh, you imagine, like, in this day and age, just hearing about someone and you decide, I'm going to marry them? What a gamble. You didn't really know what you're going to wind up with. But Krishna, because his qualities are so transcendently attractive, she just completely gave her heart to him. And she was only a young girl, she was about 15 or 16. Everything had to be arranged for her to marry Shishupal, therefore she wrote a letter to Krishna, which she'd sent to a Brahmana, and invited him to kidnap her. And come save me from this situation. Verse 53. Lord Krishna even attracts the mind of the goddess of fortune simply by vibrating his transcendental flute. And we see that there's a story where the goddess of fortune wanted to participate in Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, but she wasn't able to because the relationship, the mood was wrong. Her mood was Aishvarya, but she couldn't participate because of that. But at some point she did. O Lord, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya attained such an opportunity to be touched by the dust of your lotus feet. For this end, the goddess of fortune performed austerities for centuries, giving up all other desires and taking austere vows. Indeed, we do not know how the serpent Kaliya got such an opportunity. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:16-36, was spoken by the wives of the Kaliya serpent, the Nagapatnis. And so, they were just remarking how, how did he get such a good fortune as to have you dancing on his head? Then we go on. There's not many purports in this section, and that's one of the reasons why I'm just reading his qualities. Krishna attracts not only the minds of the gopis and the goddesses of fortune, but the minds of all the young girls in the three worlds as well. And every girl wants an ideal husband. Every husband wants an ideal wife. And the ideal husband is Krishna, because Krishna is able to fulfill all our desires. He understands. Because the nature of Krishna, because he's there in our heart, he knows what's best for us. He knows what we really want. And we may be confused about what it is we want in life. We may be, and sometimes you see, especially with younger people, they tend to be quite confused about, what it is they're looking for in life. You ask them that they're not really sure where they want to go in life, because the mode of passion is having its effect, and it's quite confusing. But Krishna, because he's there in the heart, because he's the Supreme Person of God, he's the seed-giving Father of all living entities, he knows what is just the right thing to satisfy every single living entity, and it's different for everyone. But he knows perfectly. So, this is the point that's being made here. He tracks the mind of all the young girls in all the three worlds as well. And this is why, we see that when Prabhupada, when he first came to the USA and he started actively preaching amongst the Westerners, the Krishna conscious movement exploded. And the reason why is because the living entities are all part and parcel of Krishna. The living entities are all originally Krishna conscious. It's not like it's something foreign. To be a servant of Krishna is who we are. What's that? Nityasiddha Krishna Prem Sarvanam. Nityasiddha Krishna Prem? Satyakamanai. Savanadi Sutichitu Karodaya. It's not coming from somewhere else. It's already there. This Nityasiddha, this eternal perfection of Krishna Prem, is already there in the heart. It just requires to be awoken. And the way it's awoken is through this process of hearing and chanting. And it's just like, what's that verse? Seva Mukhi Jiva Svainamaya Visparatyaha. Yeah, Atasri Krishna Navavid Gravindre. No, that's not. Is that the one?
Yeah.
It describes how that, the process of bhakti begins with the Seva Mukhi Jiva, it begins with the tongue. So by vibrating Krishna's name and by tasting Krishna Prasad, then we come to understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord. Just through this simple process of chanting Krishna's names, this loving propensity that we have, this, it's not just a propensity, it's who we are. We're all servants of Krishna. Jivera Suprabhay Krishnena Nidras, Krishnena Tatasti Shakti Veda Ved Prakash. This is the nature of the jiva. The jiva is a servant of Krishna. Whatever imposition we may have imposed upon us in this material world, it's all artificial, it's all temporary. And so we see that when Prabhupada started to spread Krishna consciousness, it exploded. And in a few short years, there was thousands, tens of thousands of people chanting Hare Krishna. And why is that? It's because the living entity was coming into come to contact with their actual eternal nature. And so Prabhupada's preaching in his presence was very, very powerful and very successful. And it awoke of that natural propensity of the jiva to want to serve Krishna. My dear Lord, Krishna, where is that woman within the three worlds who would not be captivated by the rhythms of the sweet songs coming from your wonderful flute? Who would not fall down from the path of chastity in this way? Your beauty is the most sublime within the three worlds. Upon seeing your beauty, even cows, birds, animals, and trees in the forest become stunned in jubilation. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-40. And we see, in this section of the Bhagavatam that's being quoted from here, it talks about how the beauty of Krishna affects the residents of Vrindavan, how the beauty of his flute playing. The calves, they're sucking milk from their mothers, and they become so stunned when they hear Krishna's flute playing, they just forget to suck milk. And this is the nature of Krishna. It's like in this material world, you'd be hard-pressed to find beauty that just, you're so stunned you can't function. You'd be hard-pressed to find such a thing. You'd always be able to find some kind of, impurity or inebriety in that beauty. But Krishna's beauty is so attractive. This what Lord Chaitanya is describing here is all these wonderful qualities of Krishna, and how the jiva in their natural state is so attracted to these qualities they can't stop themselves from being drawn to Krishna. And this is why, for us, the process of Krishna consciousness is so wonderful and so attractive, because we're just almost forcibly we're drawn towards Krishna. And the more we engage in hearing and chanting, the more our senses become purified and we become attracted to Krishna. And this, Prabhupada makes this point. I was listening to a lecture a few weeks back. And Prabhupada was emphasizing this point of somehow or other you have to become attracted to Krishna. Because if you can cultivate that attraction, if you become attracted to Krishna, then your life is perfect. You don't need anything else. But if we can't develop our attraction for Krishna, it means we're just going to continually struggle here in the material world, suffering the burning threefold miseries, birth, death, old age, disease, etc. But you know, if we can develop our attraction through Krishna, and the only way to develop the attraction for Krishna is through the process of devotional service. And the situation is exactly the same for all the conditioned living entities. They're going to suffer, just life after life in this material world, unless they can develop the attraction for Krishna. And the only way they'll develop that attraction for Krishna is if we give them the opportunity to hear about Krishna. And Prabhupada would sometimes mention that when people don't develop this attraction, he would say it's the fault of the preacher, because they haven't given them the holy name. They haven't given them this taste for hearing and chanting. And so it's really nice that here in Zurich, for instance, you do Harinam several times a week. So you're going down here to the lake down there, to the tourist area, and you're giving people the opportunity to hear the holy names. And even though we see that sometimes people may deride us for chanting the holy names, they may make fun of us, they may even be aggressive towards us. And actually there's a devotee in Melbourne, he's a Prabhupada disciple, and he recounts how before he became a devotee, he used to throw stones at the devotees when they were on Harinam. But his heart became purified by hearing the holy name, because Prabhupada says it's like you inject the poison of Krishna into their dull wood-like brains. It has its effect. So the more we can expose people to the Krishna poison, and Prabhupada uses that word, it's not, in a sense it acts like a poison, but it's not a poison, it's actually nectar. The more we can expose people to this, the more their hearts become purified. And as their hearts become purified, Prabhupada gives an analogy. It's just like, if people are hearing the holy name, they're getting a book, they're taking Krishna Prasad, it's like, they're given, it's like getting $1 every day. And then when they get $100, they can start a business. So in the same way, it's like, by constantly hearing, well not constantly, but by hearing Krishna's name, by reading Krishna Prabhupada's books, by taking Krishna Prasad, by meeting with devotees, all these different things, they're gradually getting purified. And they get to a certain point where it's like a tipping point, and then they start to take the Krishna conscious practice. So it's very important that we, it's kind of interesting because we've had experiences in Australia, for instance, where and I'm sure you have the same experiences here, where you meet someone who's just a tourist, they're travelling through, and they might get a book, or they meet a devotee, or they come to the farm or something like that. And then several years later, you meet them in a temple somewhere else in the world, because of that contact they had in a different place. There was a story before the Soviet Union, when it was the USSR, of how someone had been on a ship, like a merchant seaman on a ship, and he got a book in Australia, and he went back to Russia, and someone else got that book, and then that book was hand copied by devotees that was distributed to many, many people in the USSR. So you see how sometimes it's described that these books are like time bombs. So when the books go out, people, I remember I had a Science of Self-Realization for several years, and I didn't read it. I just kept it. And then, I don't know what it was that inspired me, but my brother gave it to me, and I started to read it. And then I bought a Bhagavad Gita, and the rest, as they say, the rest is history. But just by having this contact with Krishna, a person's love for Krishna eventually will awaken. The women of Vrindavan who are on the level of superior gardens, so this is the older devotees who are on the level of superior guardians, are attracted to Lord Krishna maternally. The men of Vrindavan are attracted as servants, friends and fathers. The qualities of Krishna captivate and attract everything living and non-living. Even birds, animals and trees are attracted to Krishna's qualities. even the stones in Vrindavan are attracted to Krishna. And when they hear Krishna's fruit, they melt. Actually, there's an interesting story about Narada Muni. And he had heard that Hanuman was a good singer. So he went to ask Hanuman to sing. And this is the nature of transcendental sound vibration. So Hanuman started to sing, and Narada Muni put down his veena on a rock, and this rock was hearing Hanuman sing. The rock melted, and the veena sort of sunk down into the rock, and when he stopped singing, the rock went hard again. So couldn't be rock. Interesting. Although the word Hari has many different meanings, two of them are foremost. The meaning, this kind of a new word. Yeah. So yeah, this was about just talking about this verse up to verse 59 then. And this is a really important point that Lord Chaitanya has been describing here, how the qualities of Krishna are so attractive that all living entities, if they're exposed to hearing about Krishna, are automatically drawn. And so this is our responsibility as servants of Srila Prabhupada and as servants of Rupa Goswami, is to give the living entities as much opportunity as we can to hear about Krishna, to become exposed to the qualities of Krishna. And this can be manifested in so many different forms. It can be Harinam, it can be book distribution, it can be prasad distribution, it can even just be simply whenever you're having interactions with the non-devotees, is just to have nice exchanges with them. Because, even a simple thing like, if you're going somewhere and, whatever you're interacting. I mean, I've had interactions with devotees, with non-devotees, where they just think, you're not like ordinary people, you're not like an ordinary person, you don't get, I remember a job I had a number of years ago, the guy who I was working with, he always gets stressed over things, like really easily gets stressed. And he said, you're not like other people I work with, you don't get stressed over these things. And sometimes you'll find that materialists get angry over things, and so if even in our ordinary dealings, Prabhupada was saying, we have to be ladies and gentlemen, we have to interact with people in a way that will attract them to Krishna. Always try to keep that in mind. Whatever you're doing, try to act in a way that attracts others to Krishna. Because that is the only thing that is going to save them from this cycle of birth and death, is they become attracted to Krishna. And so whatever you can do to attract someone to Krishna is meaningful and it's worth doing. And I think it's going to be helpful for them. All right, any questions or comments?
There's a switch maybe on the down there. Yeah, not really up.
Yeah, that
You have to keep it pressed.
Technology has some advantages, but also has disadvantages. There's an interesting story. Madhavisa Prabhu bought Prabhupada a watch, digital watch, one of the first digital watches that came out. And previously Prabhupada just had a watch with a dial, you just look at the watch like that. And he says, this is modern society. I have this watch, I have to do this, then I have to press it to see it. Yeah? So that's technology, you've got to do things to the microphone to make it work.
First time I heard about Krishna was in a popular novel.
With what?
In a popular novel.
Okay.
A book. And I don't think the person is a bhakta or a devotee. I don't actually know who the I forget the name of the author right now. The book was called Life of Pi. When I was in high school. I think they made a movie about it. So that was the first time I heard about Krishna in my life. He wrote just a page or something about one lila. When Yashoda Maya was looking in his mouth to see the dirt, and she saw a lot more than dirt. So then, it was like and he said that this is a description from the Hindu. This is a description from the Hindu tradition about God. But I remember I was thinking, it really stuck in my mind, and I was thinking for a long time after that, who is this Krishna? And how is it that he could have a universe inside of him? Is this some kind of mystic power? What is this?
Yeah.
And it really drew me in. So I wanted to ask Prabhu, sometimes we say that it's like very more important than like, or I don't know if we say more important, but the source from which we hear about Krishna is very important because it has to be coming from a line, authorized line.
Yeah.
But I don't think this was coming in such a way. But still, it has such an effect on me. So is it that Krishna in any form and from any place that he appears, it's always auspicious?
Yeah, Thakur Haridas explains that this is in the Harinam Chintamani, that the holy name of Krishna is attractive. And even in the English language, you'll see, for instance, when Ramudala, we were coming here and we saw Rama fluid. They were selling some sort of hydraulic fluid or something. It's called Rama fluid. So when people see that, or they read it and they say the name Rama, they get benefit.
Right.
Or like in English, we have the word panorama. So you say, look at this beautiful panoramic view. You're saying the name of Rama, so you're getting benefit. Thakur Haridas also mentions that even when the syllables are separated by other syllables, you're getting benefit. It's not like the same benefit you would get from Nama Basma or Suriname. Not the same, but there's benefit. So even when you receive you come into contact with Krishna through a non, not in parampara, there's still going to be some benefit. But if you want to achieve love of Godhead, you need to receive it in the proper way, because as Prabhupada describes in that Hare Krishna record album, he said, however, the name must be received from a pure devotee, because otherwise it produces poisonous effects. So if we're hearing the philosophy of Krishna from a non-devotee, or we're being instructed about the name from a non-devotee, it will contaminate your heart. And even within ISKCON we get this. Just like, I received an email yesterday, I'm not going to say who it is or anything like that, but there's this devotee, he's very opinionated, and he seems to me like he's got nothing better to do than sit around in front of his computer and just send out emails all day long about his opinions on everything. And in the email, he's talking about how women are, they particularly have to do deity worship because they're so disadvantaged because they're having a female body. And I'm thinking, where on earth do you get this stuff from? We're all disadvantaged because we have a material body. Material bodies are not suitable vehicles for doing devotional service. Prabhupada mentions 7.5.23.24. Unless the grihas is engaged in deity worship from 4 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, their fall down is positively assured. Because they're dealing with material nature, they have to engage in deity worship. So, all I want to know is when people write stuff like that, where do you get your information from? Because it's not coming from our founder Acharya, and neither is it coming from our Acharyas. So even we see and if we listen to people like that, we get bewildered. So even you'll find, there's non-devotees there who are completely confused about, my son had a yoga school for a number of years. He closed it, I think, last year. And my wife and I used to go to yoga there because, when you get older, you really young, you should also work on keeping your body fit and healthy so you can do emotional service, because what will happen is when you get older, you'll start to have problems, like really major problems. So it's good to work on keeping your body in good shape so you can serve Krishna. That needs to be the motive though, not that you have big muscles. The motive needs to be serving Krishna. Anyway, so we used to go there regularly. And I liked his classes because he would speak Bhagavad Gita according to Srila Prabhupada. He'd interweave it into the class, but he wouldn't mention this is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami or anything. But the other guys, when they were given the yoga instruction, they come up with all this self-styled Mayavadi philosophy. There's just stuff they're making up on the spot. And I think, sometimes I speak to them and say, well, actually, this is not really correct what you're saying here. But, it's just like in one ear and out the other. They don't really understand. And neither can they understand because their hearts are not purified. So when you're hearing things from non-devotees, that's okay, fine. It's going to have its effect. People are going to hear the name of Krishna. Just like I can think of quite a few examples, actually. There was a movie called The Muppet Movie, and like the star of the movie, what's his name? Kermit, Hermit, or something like that, the frog. He's like, you know, floating through the swamp. And then some guy says, "Are you lost? You need the Reverend Hare Krishna." So just the holy name just pops out in this movie. My first experience of the holy name was when I went to see that movie in '75, I think it was, the concert in Bangladesh. And I can't remember if it was before that or after that, like just before going to see the movie or just after the movie, then I saw Harinam on the street in Melbourne. You know, so you know, it's kind of really interesting the way things. You know. But then George Harrison, he was obviously empowered because Prabhupada told him to do that, to write that song. So he was empowered to do that. So in that way you can understand that people who hear that song will get the blessings of a pure devotee, because it's the instruction of a pure devotee. There's so many movies, advertisements. There's an advertisement they had in London for a while. There's a Wrangler denim, like denim shirt, jackets and that. And like, there's this, the Harinam party's going, and it was the devotees, it wasn't actors. It was the Harinam party was going down Oxford Street, and there was an actor there. And he had, he was dressed up as a devotee, and he had a Wrangler denim jacket on. And I can't remember exactly what the caption was. It was like something about, I'm not going to go if I can't take my Wrangler jacket with me. But it's kind of interesting because they had the devotees there chanting, So, I remember Mukunda Maharaj, when he was in California, he would organise lots of things like that for devotees to be in movies. So, and it has a powerful effect because these movies and advertisements are seen by millions of people, and so what's happening is that they're getting this infection, if you like, of Krishna consciousness, and it'll build up, it'll build up, it'll build up, and eventually, like you, they'll start to inquire, well, what is this? Who is this person who's got a universe in his mouth? And then it requires a degree of piety, it requires a degree of purity of heart. Very small, but it requires something. If someone's just an out-and-out atheist, they're like, oh, these Hare Krishnas are at it again, these guys should be stamped out and you get rid of them, and they're very negative towards devotees. But even some people, like I said, this devotee I know who was throwing rocks at the devotees. You can never tell who's going to come to the process of Krishna consciousness. And one time Prabhupada, he said, just to put a perspective on it, it's like, don't be so concerned, what did you say? I can't remember exactly how he said it. Don't be surprised at who leaves, but be surprised at who stays. Because you just never know who's going to stick it out. Like sometimes, looking back at the history of ISKCON, going back through the 80s and that, we had all these like big gun devotees, like big devotees. Where are they now? They're just not around. So somehow or other, they weren't able to sustain their attraction to Krishna consciousness, either through offense or through misunderstanding the philosophy or Mayavadi interpretations or whatever. No idea. But the main thing is that others, they stay and they persist in Krishna consciousness. It's not about being a big devotee, it's not about being, anything wonderful. It's just about, trying to develop our attraction to Krishna. This really needs to be where our focus is somehow or other you have to become attracted to Krishna. And if we can cultivate that attraction, we will be successful. Yes, Guru.
Krishna. I wondered when you were speaking, so obviously you said that in order to get attracted we need to perform devotional service, then our senses get purified, and then we get attracted, we get a bit maybe more sensitive towards the narrations of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But when we are reading, when we are actually in front of the Shastra or in front of the devotee who explains, can you share maybe any hints how we can penetrate this transcendental qualities that are explained? You know, when we read like Krishna is so beautiful, Krishna is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you cannot think about it, how beautiful he is. So can you share any hints how we can actually understand how beautiful he is?
It's quite remarkable, because if you read these descriptions, we can understand we have no comparison or no sense of it in this material world. You might get hints of things now and then, like you know, sometimes. Have you ever smelled musk? It's such an extraordinary smell. And Radharani's scent is described to be like a combination of musk and camphor and a few other different things. Her complexion is described to be like a combination of gold, lightning, and a kadamba flower. Just to give, and that gives you an idea, but actually it's really inadequate. You know, if you take molten gold and you mix it with the colour of lightning, and also the colour of a kadamba flower, it's, well, that's a poor comparison, you know. So, like, you take all the attractive things in this world, you put them together, it's not going to come close to what Krishna and Radha and these transcendental personalities are like. You know, and even we can read stories of personalities like Narottam Das Thakur. He was so beautiful. You know, Srinivasacharya, the bodily form was so attractive. And the only way we can develop attraction is by purifying our senses. Because as we say, this atasi Krishna Namanidam Vikram, Seva Mukhi Jiva Svayam Spradina. It's only by, you know, because with the materially contaminated senses, you cannot perceive transcendental nature. This is one of the reasons deity worship is so important, because we're actually coming into contact with transcendental nature. When we touch the deity, we're touching transcendental nature, just like you worship the shalagrams this morning. You're not holding a rock, you're holding God. So you're contacting God directly. And this is why Prabhupada explained to the GBC one time. He said, you know that Bajari is the most fortunate person in the world. So just think of that. Every time you're on the altar, you're the most fortunate person in the world, because you are serving Krishna directly. In a letter, Prabhupada explained that when, you know, it was to Himavati, I think, and he talks about this concept of Achan Siddhi. And then he said that if one, he said by performing deity worship, one can achieve Achan Siddhi, perfection. Yeah? And if one achieves Achan Siddhi, at the end of this life, you go directly back to the spiritual world. And you might think, well, but how's that? Other places says you have to go to some universe in the material world where Krishna is performing his pastimes and perfect yourself. But if you're doing deity worship and you perfect yourself, you're already engaged in Krishna's pastimes. Because Krishna's there. It's not like he's somewhere else, he's right there on the altar. And by perfecting ourselves in deity worship, we achieve Achan Siddhi. We achieve, that is Achan Siddhi. By perfecting ourselves in deity worship, we're participating in Krishna's pastimes directly. Just like, you know, the story of Sakshi Gopal, that young Brahmana, he's engaging in pastime with Krishna. Krishna's walking across India for him. So there's no secret to it, or if there is, it's an open secret. By practicing the activities of devotional service, you purify your senses, and when the senses become purified, then they become qualified or capable to perceive the transcendental nature of Krishna. And deity worship is a really good way of doing that. And it goes, but yeah.
You mentioned how when we see the focus of the gopis and also how the residents of Vrindavan, it's so one-pointed. Like Prabhupada says, Vyavasaya Atmika Pute Ekeha Kurnanda, so one-pointed. and it's like as if a horse is having blinds and just sees the goal. And sometimes I often wonder that in the life of a young devotee, there are so many turbulences and disturbances, but what can I do on a daily basis so that I am just one-pointedly fixed, just seeing Krishna as the goal, despite whatever is happening around?
I can think of different examples. There's an interesting story in the Mahabharata. At one point, Dronacharya, because Dronacharya was training the Pandavas and the Kauravas to be warriors, and at one point, Dronacharya wanted to test them to see, how good they had become in archery. So he calls them up one at a time, and what he'd done, he fixed a target up in a tree, which was like a mock bird head with an eye. And he fixed the target up in the tree, and he called up one at a time. And he first said, I can't remember who he called first, he calls up Jerry and he says, there's a bird in the tree, I want you to shoot me like. He said, what do you see? He says, I see the bird, I see the tree, I see this, I see that, I see you, I see, And he said, go back. Calls up Yudhisthira Maharaj. Yudhisthira Maharaj, he sees the bird, he sees the tree, he sees Dronacharya, he sees my brother, he sees this. You can go back. And he called, one after another, he calls them up. And then he calls up Arjuna, he says, what do you see? I see the eye of the bird. What else do you see? I see the eye of the bird. Shoot straight in the eye. So the point is Arjuna, he just saw the target. He didn't see anything else. If you see the target, if you have this eka kuranandana, you have this one point of attention, you'll achieve the goal. But if we're distracted by other things, doesn't mean that you don't see other things. Just like when you're driving a car, when I was a young man, I was a bit of a hooligan in a car, so we used to go what we call bush bashing. We get, especially with front wheel drives, they're really good for it, because you could go around these corners and you could go into sideways drift, but as long as you kept the wheels pointing the way you wanted to go, the car would go there. So it's kind of like that. You have to constantly make adjustments to make sure you go in the right direction. And in order to be making those adjustments, you need to be observing what's going on around you. Especially if you're driving a car and someone's coming up on one side of you and they're not, they're actually running a light or something like that. You need to adjust in order to make sure you don't have an accident and you achieve the destination. So the same in devotional service is like you need to be aware of what's going on around you, but not become distracted by it. And one of the ways you can do that, to the same point I was saying to you, is to cultivate your attraction to Krishna. Because right now, we think other things are more attractive, or at least as attractive as Krishna. And that's the only reason you're distracted by them, because you think they're more attractive. It's just like, I don't know what it's like for you, but most of us, we look at a member of the opposite sex who we find very attractive, and minds, our senses are naturally attracted. Someone might be into computers and they see like the brand new computer, wow, the brand new phone, wow, I've got to get one of those. They're attracted to it. So we see other things in this material world either more attractive or at least as attractive as Krishna. Therefore we're distracted by it. But we have to cultivate our attraction to Krishna. And if we cultivate that attraction to Krishna, nothing in this material world will mean anything to us, and nothing in this material world will be important. We'll only see these things as a means to serve Krishna. So whatever it is you have, you just use it to serve Krishna. And this is where the principle of dovetailing is also important, is because by using something to serve Krishna, you change the nature. It becomes transcendental. Just like, we have these kartals, they're made of brass. Now, if we're just using it to make some mundane sound, it's just brass kartals. But because we're using the kartals in the glorification of Krishna, then they take on transcendental nature. And so everything we have, it's like we have microphones now, we have all these things. We use these to serve Krishna. Then they take on transcendental qualities. And this also helps us in our purification, because we're seeing the connection or the relationship of this to Krishna. You understand? And so by connecting to Krishna, we then see the relationship. This is not my microphone, this is Krishna's microphone. And I remember when I joined ISKCON, one of the services I did the most was wash the pots when I joined. And so I wasn't just washing the pots and cursing the cooks and stuff like that. I was washing Krishna's pots. And I was really happy doing that, because they were Krishna's pots. And I used to make sure those pots were spotlessly clean, because I remember reading the story of when Prabhupada was teaching Jamuna, when she came for Janaki's wedding, and he was teaching Jamuna how to wash the pots. And Prabhupada, it was a really interesting story, because she was in the bathtub washing the pots, because it's the only place Prabhupada had to wash pots. And so she scrubbed the pots and she'd say, "Is this okay, Swamiji?" I said, "Oh, this is very good, but could you just get rid of that little black spot there?" And she scrubbed, get rid of the black spot. "Oh yes, very nice. This black spot here?" And so she kept going until there was no spots on the pot. And so that for me was an inspiration when I was cleaning pots, to make sure there was no black spots. But seeing everything connected to Krishna, this is really important, because everything is Krishna's energy. Everything you are, your body is, everything you have, everything, the temple, everything you're doing, it's all connected to Krishna. And if you can see that connection to Krishna, this will help you to become more and more purified. And one of the points I often discuss, especially when I do home programs, is this verse from the 9th chapter of the Gita, Yat Karoshi, Yat Yadasnasi, Yat Yosinasa, Yat Tapashashi Kuntaya, Tat Krishna. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer give away, whatever austerities you perform, you do that as Son of Kuti was offering for me. Then 2 verses later, because the next verse is Patra Pushpan Poyam, but the verse after that, Suva Suva Galaya Vamokse Kampadana, where in Krishna he says, with your mind fixed on me and this principle of renunciation, you'll be liberated and then you'll come to me. So the idea is that whatever we're doing, doesn't matter what it is, if we're eating something, it's just like, okay, we can't always have Krishna Prasad in the temple. Sometimes you're out and about, you're doing stuff like that. So you go in the shop and you buy something. You don't just eat it straight away, you offer it to Krishna, then it becomes Krishna Prasad. You're only eating to maintain the body. So just try to, in our lives, just every single thing we do, try to connect it to Krishna. And in this way, our attraction develops. Because this is the key point. Develop your attraction for Krishna, to get to the point where nothing else in this material world holds attraction for you. You only see it as something for serving Krishna. It's not something I use to enjoy. It's not for my senses. It's just simply there for Krishna. Just like when we do Fayakyas sometimes, there's one mantra, Idam Krishna, Idam Dhamma. This is for Krishna, this is not for me. So we need to get to the point where everything in the material world is for Krishna, it's not for me. Still means you can use it and benefit from using it, but you're just doing it for Krishna. And that's how you develop that attraction. So, long-winded answer. Anything else? Good. Now we can go and eat for Krishna. Maintain our bodies for Krishna. So Prabhupada ki, Salveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
His Grace Nishina Kalacha Prabhu ki Jai.
Krishna, but she completely surrenders herself to Krishna and gets no other attraction through hearing. And what did she do right, and what can we, what are we doing so wrong?
Yeah, it's a little bit different with, I'm sure there's some commentary by the acharyas to that point, but I'm not aware of it. It was a little bit different when you talk about the associates. Yeah. Because really, if you look at that story, what that story is demonstrating is the power of hearing. And so by hearing about Krishna, her attraction, because she's an eternal associate. So Yogamaya is like cover over, so she forgets about that as she's growing up. And then she hears about Krishna, and then becomes available. She kindles that attraction to Krishna. But the way, the thing is, this is telling you, the way you can love that Krishna is through hearing. Hearing about Krishna. That's what it's telling us. Hearing about Krishna, these qualities are so attractive. You just hear about it.
How do you let it penetrate?
Study scriptures. That's why it's so important to study scripture. Because you look at, the 10th canto especially, it's just from start to finish, it's just discussing the qualities of Krishna. But I'm not suggesting you jump and go straight to the 10th canto. Start with the first canto, working through. In the 10th chapter of Gita, the 11th chapter of Gita, so many qualities of Krishna being described. In an Aishvarya sense. But then if you go into the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see it's more this Madhurya sense, especially in the 10th canto. But just by hearing, attending classes regularly, listening to lectures regularly, you're always going to think about Krishna. This is how normal it is to hear Chaitanya Sadhana, just 24 hours a day, just hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, telling others about Krishna. Pretty nice lifestyle. Hear about Krishna all day long. That's why I love my service. I just get to travel and tell people about Krishna. Second question.
Yes, you were mentioning how dangerous it is if we how dangerous it is if we listen to the wrong sources. And I wanted to ask what to do if we know some devotees who are listening to some kind of Maya things or whatever.
Yeah, you really have to look at your relationship with them. Do you have such a relationship that you can say something to them? If you don't have a relationship, then the best you can do is pray. Pray for their well-being. If you have a relationship, then you can encourage them to listen to Prabhupada, listen to read Prabhupada's books and things like that. If you don't have that relationship, trying to say something will just create animosity. And that's what's the point of that. Yeah, so the older or younger brother? Yeah, younger brother you might have more effect than the older brother. If he looks up to you as a big sister, older brother, probably not. It depends on the relationship you have. If they look up to you, then yeah, you can do that. But if they don't look up to you, it's very difficult. But you can pray and you can set a good example. And you can discuss things. Oh, have you heard what Prabhupada said about this? Or have you read the Krishna book that says this? But don't be preachy. There's no one else there. No problem. What's your name? Yamuna. Thank you. Sorry, Krishna. Tamil program. Love to see the Tamil Tigers, yeah?
Yes.
So that's here or somewhere else?
Here. In this room, yeah.
Okay. In this.
To be done 12:50 like this. Okay.
I don't have to speak Tamil though, do I?
We will translate by Tamil translation.
I don't know any Tamil at all. I don't understand, say hello in Tamil. Good.
Thank you for the
Yes.
We have some time for feedback.
Maybe after Prasad, and I'll call my wife at 10. Or 11, would that work? You got the same watch? No? I like it.
It's not getting
Probably start making us invite them to see.
I have one. I will make it next shirt. But I think then it will be fresh. I don't have to have it with honey. So it's from
know if it's not called anything. That's something with cloud.
Clouds and stuff.
I can bring it to you.
What